Hi, my name's Kate James. I'm a cataloger and a former member of the RDA Steering Committee. This video is about the entity Timespan. It's part of the RDA Concepts series. It's available on the RDA Toolkit YouTube channel. If you haven't already done so, I suggest that you first watch the videos on entities and domain and range because I'll be referring to some concepts that are explained in that video. As you can see, I'm in the new RDA Toolkit. I can go to the Timespan page by selecting it from this drop-down menu. Here's the definition. It's a temporal extent having a beginning, an end, and a duration. So before we talk about that further, I want to give you a little history on Timespan. Timespan was not an entity in original RDA because original RDA was based upon 3 FR models and Timespan was not in any of them. However, when those 3 FR models were consolidated into the library reference model, the group doing the consolidation took a look at the existing entities and saw that there was a lot of latent relationships between those entities in Timespan. For example, a person is born in 1975, manifestation is published in 2018, and so on. So they decided that it was worth it to establish this new entity in the model so we could have relationships formally expressed between Timespan and those entities and vice versa. When you see this definition, it notes that there's a beginning, an end, and a duration. And if you think about how this would work in real life, you might be wondering, how is it going to work? Because if you have a manifestation in front of you, it might say that it's published in 2018, but it doesn't tell you when in 2018. I think it's safe to assume that it probably didn't take 365 days to publish, but you don't know when it began, when it ended, how long it took. All you know is the year 2018. And that's okay. It doesn't say this in RDA, but it does say this in the LRM scope notes for Timespan. So I'm going to read this to you so you'll feel okay about just recording 2018 for the Timespan. In library implementations, the instances of Timespan considered useful in bibliographic or authority data are often expressed in years, and there's examples in parentheses I'll skip, even though the associated event took place during only a portion of the year. So it's fine to record 2018 as the time span for data publication. Now, a time span can be expressed as a year in numbers. It can be expressed as a term, like the Renaissance. You can use a precise date, like April 23rd, 1616, which is the date Shakespeare died. I'll show you an example now of the time span related to some other entities so you can see what this might look like in RDA. So this is the element date of birth of. So the of at the end is key. So this is going to identify a time span by its relationship to a person. At the bottom of this page, there's an example. So we have a time span, 1975, and we're going to use that preferred name to identify the time span. And it is date of birth of Beckham, David, 1975. So this is the authorized access point for this person that's being used to represent him. So that's how we relate a time span to a person. As you can see here in this example, the time span 1975 has relationships to other instances of entities, like this manifestation, the eagle has landed, has relationship to this person, to this corporate body, and even to this gnomon. And at this point, you might be wondering, why would I want to do this? And maybe you're panicking because you're thinking about all of the manifestations you have in your library that were published in 1975 and all of the people that were born or died in 1975, and you think it would take an awful lot of time and work to record those relationships. And you wonder, who would come into my library and want to look for something just by searching the year 1975? Maybe one person, but not many. And you're right. it's probably not going to be as useful to record the relationships between the time span to the other entities as it is to record the inverse. So the relationships between those entities in time span. And you don't have to record relationships between time span and those entities if you don't want to. You can just record the inverse. So I will segue now into this inverse element, date of birth. So this is the inverse of date of birth of, and this will be a lot more familiar to you, and I think that you will immediately see the value here, that we identify the person by recording their relationship date of birth to this time span. Here's an example. So this person has date of birth 1869, and we do this all the time in our library catalogs because the date of birth helps us to disambiguate one person from another with the same name. If you're used to working in original RDA, you might be wondering, well, what's the difference? Because I know I was recording date of birth in original RDA. So the difference is that in original RDA, the date of birth was an attribute element because there was no time span entity. And in new RDA, it's a relationship element because time span is now an entity. So it's serving the same function, which is to identify the person. However, it's just a different kind of element now because time span is an entity. And this is very common with new RDA, that there's a lot more relationship elements because we have more entities. So thank you very much for watching. I hope that you feel a little bit better about time span now. Bye.